All right, so thanks once again for joining us and for participating in our chat. It's always great to see where folks are joining us from, just so we get an idea of who our audience is. And now I want to get to our panelists. So my name is Mike. I work with ClearAdmit. We are a business school applicant community and resource site. For those of you who are interested in any business school programs at the graduate level, come check us out. We have a lot of great content and advice and tips on how to get into the top business schools. One of those business schools being Carnegie Mellon University's Tepper School of Business, who came to us with an awesome idea for a panel today, and we're really happy to partner on this event. We have a few members of their career services office, which I'm probably saying that term wrong, but you can introduce the actual name of that office, as well as Jerry McGrath from the admissions team to talk all about career outcomes, which I think, without getting too deep into the current environment, I think it is top of mind for applicants, no matter what year it is. What are these outcomes? What is this degree going to help me to do and accomplish? And so I'm hoping to learn a ton from this event. No pressure to our panel today, but I'm really excited to hear about what you have to say. And with that, I want to pass it over to J.R. McGrath, who is the Executive Director of Master's Admissions at Carnegie Mellon. J.R., thanks for putting this panel together.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. Obviously, we're excited to be here. We're always trying to find topics that are top of mind for our candidates. And in particular, the job market comes up often, right? Everyone's always wondering, what is it like? How am I going to be supported? And we thought the best way to be able to do that was to bring the experts here and just have an open and honest and transparent conversation. So what I'm going to do here, I'll give a very brief introduction myself. I'll let everybody, these wonderful people on the call introduce themselves, and then we'll get through some of the content here. So as Mike said, my name is JR. I serve as the Executive Director of Masters Admissions. We work with all of our MBA programs as well as our specialized masters in analytics and management and product management. And we're excited to be able to bring this wonderful panel together. One of the things I do want to highlight as we are kind of talking a little bit about Tepper and the job market, we've tried very hard to integrate what candidates are bringing into the program in terms of like their exit, which is also why the admissions and the career team, we actually share office space. We want to make sure that we're always talking about that and keeping it top of mind as we're working with candidates and in particular making sure that we're putting out the right offers for candidates that are a great fit for our school and programs. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Jackie for her to introduce herself.
All right. Thanks, JR. Can you hear me okay? So I think Mike wasn't clear on the formal name of our group. It's Masters of the Universe. I mean, Masters Career Center, um, often referred to as MCC. So you may hear us say MCC, and that just stands for
You gotta
Masters.
laugh, Jackie.
Yay! That stands for Masters Career Center. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us from near and far. I am so impressed with these locations. So yeah, my name is Jackie, and I work in the Masters Career Center. And just a quick, before I tell you a little bit about my background, I just want to tell you a little bit about how our office is set up and just how we set it up in a way that we're kind of creating a very high touch experience for our students. So I have a vertical expertise, subject matter expertise. Mine is finance. And so the office is set up where we have counselors focused on a vertical or subject matter expertise. So mine's finance, and then my colleagues will talk about theirs as well. So once admitted and once you matriculate, you indicate, broadly speaking, what your interests are through a Qualtrics survey that we ask you to complete. And then based on those survey results, you're assigned to one of the counselors in the office that is most closely aligned with your area of interest. And that's how the conversation gets started. Doesn't necessarily mean it's the last stop on your train, but it's definitely a good place to start. And then I always tell my students, if I don't know the answer, I certainly can find someone who does. And so I'm always redirecting as well as the conversations get started with our students. But that's how the process gets started with us. So you have three verticals represented here today, and mine is finance, as I mentioned. So after getting my MBA at the University of Chicago many moons ago, I spent several years in the financial services industry, primarily in institutional equities. And then I leveraged that experience to help our students, our master's students at the Tepper School of Business, pursue careers in finance, primarily in investment banking, corporate finance, and asset management. Though I feel like the universe of finance is broader than that, but those are the three primary areas that our MBAs are interested in pursuing. And then I just wanted to share or highlight a few experiences our MBAs had this past semester that I organized, that our office organized. One, in September, we had our annual investment banking immersion week where we had several banks where our alums work engage and connect with our students to talk about careers in investment banking. And then that was followed by a visit to New York City during the October break, where we had a chance to visit our alums at the banks, including Morgan Stanley, Bank of America, JP Morgan, Jefferies, and we spent a few days there, and it was just a great experience. We also had a corporate finance immersion experience for our students interested in corporate finance, where we connected our students to senior leaders at companies like Ford, Merck, Blue Origin. And then finally, I worked pretty closely with the Tepper Capital Management Club, which is our asset management club, to help them navigate the investment competition waters this fall, which got pretty busy. And that was both locally and nationally. So I'm happy to discuss these career pathways and others with you as you're interested. And then with that, I will hand it over to, is Lesley next? I'll hand it over to my colleague, Lesley.
Thank you, Jackie. Appreciate it. Well, depending upon your time zone, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Lesley. I focus primarily on consulting and strategy. So my work experience prior to completing my graduate degrees was in all areas of operations. I then moved forward. I completed what was called at that time Master of Science in Industrial Administration, an MSIA degree, and then moved forward and completed a PhD in Operations Systems. After that, I focused on strategy consulting with a particular emphasis on operations strategy. That emphasis allowed me to work across industries. So I led projects in everything from automotive, biopharma, consumer packaged goods, financial services, technology, not-for-profit, et cetera. And that allowed me to really understand the different types of strategic problems that firms face, some that are unique to a given industry, some that are common across industries. At Tepper, as I mentioned, I support students primarily interested in consulting and strategy. I work closely with a number of the strong Tepper clubs for graduate students, including the Tepper Consulting Club. Also work closely with our Black Business Association, Asian Business Association, and Out and Allied. And with another one of my colleagues, we work closely to help prepare our members of the Consortium for Graduate Study and Management for the events that they will attend as they move forward. I planned the annual consulting trek this past October. We were in Chicago and worked closely with the consulting club to make sure that the students are well prepared to take advantage of the opportunity to meet with firms, to meet with recruiters, alums at a variety of firms. This past October, we met with alums at McKinsey, LEK Consulting, PwC, Deloitte, et cetera. I also interact with recruiters and alumni from a variety of consulting firms, as well as internal consulting or strategy groups to really keep up to date with trends, with changes that are occurring in the recruiting process, with changes in terms of expectations of candidates, et cetera. So, for example, obviously when the COVID pandemic started, everybody had to move to virtual interviews. We're seeing now in the past 12 months that a number of firms are starting to move back to in-person interviews for both summer internship candidates and then final rounds for full-time positions. So happy to talk to you about your questions about consulting, about strategy, about things that we see changes going on. And with that, I'll hand it over to Vanessa.
Thanks, Leslie. Hi, everyone. My name's Vanessa, and I joined Tepper about 2 years ago after spending roughly 25 years working in product management and marketing across a lot of different industries. Like Leslie, I worked in financial services, technology, consumer products, healthcare, manufacturing. I kind of joke, like, if there's an industry, I probably have touched it in some point in my career. And before that, I did my undergrad in business at the University of Pittsburgh. And also, I'm a CMU alum. I got an MS in innovation at CMU's College of Engineering a few years ago as well. And at the Tepper Masters Career Center, I work with a couple other of our colleagues. We collaborate, and we have a colleague who works with our Business and Technology Club who organizes tech treks to San Francisco every year. This year, those students got to visit tech companies like Google, Adobe, and Lucid Motors when they visited San Francisco and Silicon Valley. And then our students every fall get exposure to the tech industry through corporate events and panels and coffee chats, including our alumni at companies like Google. Amazon, Duolingo was just in for coffee chats last week. And today I really am very excited to answer your questions that you have about getting started in tech, in roles like product management, program management, and marketing.
Awesome. Thank you all for introducing yourselves. I know after I hear all that, right, like I get excited that I get to work with you all on a day-to-day basis, and I can't imagine how our students feel just knowing the breadth of experience that you all bring to the work and trying to help them navigate what's happening out in industry right now and them making good informed decisions. So for everyone, what we wanted to do here is, give you a good baseline for the people that are here on the session. We'd love to answer your questions. So as Mike had said before, we're going to use the Q&A feature. So please, when you start to have questions, throw those in there. We already have a couple in there, so we're going to kick off with some questions, but we want to make sure that you can walk away from this session with a little bit more information to help you navigate what is right for you in your career, whether that means a graduate degree or maybe it doesn't mean a graduate degree. But we have experts here that run a wide variety of what's out there in the industry right now, and in particular for graduate business programs, some of those top most sought after functions in industry and companies. So I'm really excited for our conversation. So one thing that we hear often, right, is everybody reads headlines and they're wondering what's happening in the job market. How do I navigate this? And in particular, when people come back and they're trying to make decisions, a lot are looking to possibly make a career pivot, right? Maybe you started off on one track, you're starting to think this may not be the right fit for you, and you have questions about that. And we know that in a good job market, making a pivot could be challenging. So I'm going to kind of throw it out to our panelists here. What advice could you share to help someone be successful in the current job market, and in particular, even if they are looking for a pivot?
Becky, you're
Jackie, you're
on mute.
muted.
Yeah,
There
I'm
you go.
sorry. I'm sorry. I'm unmuting. So that is a great question. I'm gonna kind of look through the lens of a finance person, and so my perspective might be a little different from my colleagues. So I'll just look at it through my lens. And I would say, let me just define the current job market through my lens, and that's finance. So I would say, looking back a year ago, about a year ago, there was, I kind of use my banking alums as a barometer for how the market's doing. And if they're in a good mood and if they tell me they're busy and the phones are ringing off the hook, I'm in a good mood. Like, I'm feeling excited as well. And so, like, a year ago, it was that way. Like, they were like, "Oh my gosh, we're busy. Phones are ringing off the hook. We're on phones with clients all the time, doing deals, etc." And then as we got into the new year, it seemed like the mood had shifted, and that the flow, the pace, the tempo slowed a little bit. And then just, broadly speaking, It wasn't just my bankers. It felt just in general, like job postings, client engagement, so employer engagement. All of it just seemed to slow as we saw more uncertainty in all the obvious areas, right? Geopolitics, tariff uncertainty and its impact on corporate earnings, you name it. And so that was the majority of the year for me until the fall. And most recently, these last few months, where I felt like, especially when we were in New York with our bankers, they were incredibly busy. So much so that, we felt that, that kind of optimism, if not just steady or consistent opportunity. And so we left there feeling like, okay, our students looking at opportunities in finance or banking are going to do okay. There's going to be opportunities out there. And in fact, that's what we've been seeing play out. So I just wanted to set the stage there that from a market environment standpoint, our students looking at finance it's consistent. It's a bit predictable. We're seeing opportunities posted, they're getting interviews, and they're getting offers. Now talking about the pivot, right? I would say of all the verticals, finance has been historically and remains an area that is very open to folks that want to pivot. And, it's so fun to think about my students that have come through the program as trumpet players in symphonies or first Red Cross volunteers, my gosh, you name it, that are now in corporate finance, banking, et cetera. So the pivot is not unique to MBA employers in finance. And that's where we come in, right? We work with you to identify the skills you've developed till now in whatever you did. And we identify those skills and we help you repurpose and repackage your brand to navigate the MBA waters. And that's fun. And and those success stories are endless. So I would say, you're in good hands in that regard if you're looking to pivot and you're exploring careers in finance.
Before I have someone else kind of jump in, there's someone put in the chat in particular, because I think this is maybe a little bit normal of a pivot with Tepper. Someone said, I'm looking to make a pivot to investment banking and I'm currently in structural engineering. Is that a more common type of pivot?
Most of I would say, many of our, not many, I really don't want to make that generalization. I have a lot of examples of engineers, whether it's a civil engineer, chemical engineer, industrial, et cetera, who come into the program and want to explore banking. And it's a very common path. And again, what you do is you think about your projects that you worked on these last several years, and then we work through kind of like, okay, what were the skills you used to do those projects? And, my famous first question that I ask someone with your background would be, okay, I forget, JR, what was the engineering? Structural. Okay, structural engineer. Did you at any point in your work experience open Excel? And oftentimes the answer is yes. In fact, you have used Excel for something. So, and that's how the process begins. But yes, it's very common for engineers to pivot into banking.
Awesome. Vanessa, Lesley, anything to add in for this question?
Yeah, so I'd like to address it from the perspective more of consulting and strategy. So first and foremost, over 95% of the students that ultimately accept offers in consulting or strategy had no previous background in strategy. Consulting firms expect that the majority of the candidates are not going to come in with previous consulting experience. So pivot into consulting is something that happens very, very, very frequently. When I think of just some past outcomes in just the past year or two, we have individuals with military backgrounds that never worked in business per se, but that have very strong leadership skills, strong problem-solving skills, strong communication skills. They're ideal candidates for a number of firms. We have individuals similar to what Jackie just described, where you have an engineering degree, whether it's in mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, civil engineering, whatever. Again, great problem-solving skills. We have individuals that have come from very different backgrounds, music theory, music performance. Just have recently thought about some individuals that I worked with previously that are scientists by training, biologists, chemists, etc. And all of these individuals have been very successful in navigating the recruiting process to get to a consulting offer. So they really, important steps to take. Do your research. Understand which firms might be a good match for you. And then really start thinking about how can you best convey your experience so that you're highlighting your interest and your skills in problem solving, your interest and your skills in working collaboratively in teams. Might have very different backgrounds. You might be dealing with clients that are very senior to you in terms of experience, that are coming from a very different geographic background, very different cultural backgrounds, et cetera. And then also be thinking about, your ability to communicate well. How can you communicate the way in which you're approaching a problem, that you're able to take others' input and communicate back to them how you're adjusting to that feedback, incorporating what their concerns are. So again, pivots happen all the time in consulting, but really stepping back, thinking your problem-solving skills and interest, your teamwork skills, and your communication skills, and do your research so that you know which firms might be a good match for you. Vanessa?
Yeah, speaking from the tech perspective, it's a little bit different, but a little bit the same of what Jackie and Lesley talked about. I think still a lot of people are pivoting into tech from other roles and other industries. And it's definitely true that recruiting in tech has changed a lot since tech went through kind of a hiring craze, we'll just call it, in 2021. And went through kind of a crash in 2023. Tech layoffs are definitely up about 17% this year. But the good news is that actually tech job postings are also up, though, this year, about 10% compared to the same time last year. So what this means is that companies are eliminating roles and products that are low ROI for them, and they're taking that savings and reinvesting it in roles supporting presumably AI, right? At the same time, they're being cautious about who they're hiring, right? They're less likely to hire somebody who almost matches, and they're looking for the perfect hire, right? So what that means is that you need a career office who's working with you to help you research the company, the problem that they're solving, and help you deeply understand how your strengths and experiences match up to the problems that they're solving. So to kind of echo what Jackie was talking about, like translating that experience as a structural engineer into how that would make you a good investment banker or product manager, or what Lesley was talking about, a consultant, right? And that's what our office is really good at. You're not limited in the number of visits that you can have with us, nor are you limited to just meeting with one counselor or one branch for your search. So if investment banking is your top choice and you focus on that for the first part of your search, and you decide later, hey, I want to give tech a try, you can meet with me and work on a tech search, right? We can help you, each of us, get razor sharp on talking about how that past experience relates to, in my case, AI and ML. In Jackie's case, it's investment banking. In Lesley's case, it's consulting, right? And then most importantly, we can help you leverage the people that you already know to help you grow the number of people in your network so that you have a lot of people who are at these companies advocating you. So it's not such a big deal that you're not 100% matched to these jobs, right? And that the company would be open to having you pivot into these roles that you want to pivot into, right? Because that's the important thing, right? Is not just being an application, but being a human and having someone who understands how your past skills and experience translate into the role that you're seeking. And so that's really your competitive advantage in this, at least like I see it in the tech job market, where, the noise says layoffs, 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 but there's still hiring happening, more competition for those roles, higher standards for those roles. You need support behind you, helping you tell your story and increasing the number of advocates that you have at that company telling your story. And that's what we can help you with.
Awesome. All great answers, all great advice. A couple quick summary things here that actually I think kind of works well in a lot of different things. What I also heard everybody say is you really need to know yourself. You need to know your current experience. You need to be able to articulate that and be able to translate that into how that may relate to the things that you want to do in the future. And I know that's always questions we get on the applications as well, is you're always thinking about how to achieve the goal. And sometimes you need to take that quick second, really think about you first, because all of those conversations are going to be so much easier if you do a little bit of that self-reflection first or look back over your experiences. So that way you can have really good and meaningful conversations, whether it's with an admissions officer, a career coach, or obviously those target and dream companies. So let's go. We're going to go over the Q&A section here a little bit. There's a couple of specific questions here we'll tackle before maybe another bigger general one. So Jackie, this looks like a corporate finance question. She's, Hannah's interested in some common companies that are hiring on the corporate finance side, and in particular, if there are any that you know of in the defense and aerospace industry.
Yeah. So let me just start more broadly and address just corporate finance recruiting is, it's a lot of different industries. So, anything from telecom, healthcare, tech, aerospace defense, et cetera. And please chime in, Lesley, Vanessa, if I'm missing any. And I know I am missing
Consumer
anybody.
products. Yeah, I mean, consumer products, industrials, pharmaceuticals, all of these. Every type of firm of any reasonable size is going to have corporate finance roles.
Yeah. And we have corporate finance recruiters that, come back every year to recruit for that function. And we also have, new companies that come every year that, post not only at our school, but at other schools. And there's some, real opportunities through those postings as well. I also want to point out, and this is when the conversations get fun with my students, just talking about your specific interest in aerospace and defense and how you might be able to explore that, not just through corporate finance, perhaps, but for instance, if investment banks also have aerospace and defense coverage groups, they're called. So maybe that might be an angle that you're interested in. Or in asset management, you could be an equity research analyst that focuses on aerospace and defense. So depending on your background and what your specific interests are, there might be different ways to explore aerospace and defense. So I just wanted to throw that out there. But these are like top of mind companies. I'm not, generating a spreadsheet and reading off of it right now, but I just exchanged emails with one of several alums at Blue Origin last week. RTX, Raytheon. I know we have several alums there. And Collins was another one that popped into my mind as well. I'm not sure it was for corporate finance, but just to offer some ideas there. But I guess I would say that, one thing I want to be clear on is if you're interested in a specific company, we can discuss a lot of different ways and to engage with that company. Whether it's directly through an alumni base that Carnegie Mellon can offer, or your undergraduate institution can offer, or whether it's at a conference that we suspect that company might be at. There are lots of different ways that we can slice that to get you in front of that company. So keep that in mind. Don't be so focused on which companies are already recruiting here. And I think that was all I wanted to say there.
So the next one is about energy. I'm going to try to take this real quick, and if anybody wants to add anything to it, please do. So, what types of roles are people going into the energy industry? I mean, they're going to see a lot of corporate finance there as well. You're going to have traditional energy companies like Exxon, Chevron, et cetera, that have really good finance leadership programs, treasury groups, et cetera. You'll have renewable energies, NextEra, others that'll have some really cool corporate finance roles. What I also see out of energy companies are a lot of leadership development programs. So, that's going to play in a few different buckets here because you're going to kind of rotate around the company, kind of going more onto that, middle management track within those companies. So it's going to be a wide variety, but just as everyone said earlier on this call, any company of notable size is going to have every business function represented, right? Like, so it really depends a little bit about what is the type that you want to what type of work that you want to do, as well as then thinking about the type of company, the type of industry, the type of impact that you want to make on the world and or that in particular industry or business. We have a really great a couple questions also in the chat. I know we said use the Q&A, but some are coming through the chat, so we're going to try to just kind of bounce between the two here. And I think this is a really great, and it's like a general question, but I think it's really important. How can I stand out in a competitive and rapidly changing job market, especially with the rise of AI and automation?
Am I going first? Oh, Vanessa, it looks like you.
Well, I mean, so coming to CMU, I don't know if everybody knows this. I was just at a conference last month, and not everyone at the conference was aware that CMU is the birthplace of artificial intelligence. One of our Nobel laureates, Herb Simon, is one of the fathers of artificial intelligence, and he created it at CMU. And the original program that he founded is still here at CMU, and students still graduate from it. And so, I think number one is, considering continuing your education at an institution like CMU is definitely a good first step in doing that. And I think, the other thing is, considering how you can find ways to both apply AI in your everyday work, but then also find ways to integrate AI into either the products or workflows or services that you're providing at work to your customers. So whether they're internal customers or teams that you're serving as an individual, or if you are literally like working on products as a engineer or a product manager or some other type of manager, that is really important as well. And then making sure that you're bringing that forward in all of your branding materials, right? Your LinkedIn profile, your resume, your cover letter, and then learning how to talk about that when you're talking with people about what you do, when you're having conversations at conferences and interviews and, after events where you're having casual conversations with speakers, making sure that you are conversant in the language of AI, I think is the best way that you keep yourself competitive in this job market. So that's kind of my high level answer. Jackie and Lesley, though, I'm interested in what your thoughts are on that too, because I know you both have interesting takes on it too.
So it's funny. The first thing that came to mind was, quoting a banker again, but the question was asked during our trek in October to our bankers, like, are you using AI to do your jobs? And a few of them were for example, one of the bankers said that he dropped numbers for year-on-year comparisons, and sure enough, the numbers that were dropped were the wrong year. And he was like, after that, I didn't trust it as much, and so like, I guess at a certain point, you need to realize that you are okay. So then you drop the numbers regardless. Let's just assume that the numbers he dropped from the computer were correct. You still need to be able to interpret those numbers and understand those numbers in the context of the company and how it operates, how it looks relative to its peers in the industry, and that sort of thing. And so there's a context to that small task of dropping the numbers and running them and coming up with your ratios. There's a context to that, and you need to be able to understand that context. And why? Because as far as I know, we're not at the point yet where robots are running the meetings with clients who are humans. We still need humans that are able to communicate the context of the situation and whether or not it makes sense to go or not go on a deal, raise money to build a factory, etc. So it hasn't taken over in that area, at least in banking. And corporate finance haven't deliberately asked the question, but I feel like it's a companion, but it hasn't replaced. And I would argue the same for asset management, perhaps a companion, but it just hasn't replaced.
Yeah, in consulting, as you can imagine, many of the firms are building their own AI tools. And so they will be continuing to do that. In some instances, they have more specialized groups that are heavily involved in that. In others, it's a broader effort. But to the first part of your question about standing out in a competitive and rapidly changing job market, I mean, you have to be able to convey your value proposition. I know that sounds crass, but you really need to know your background. You need to be ready and willing and able to clearly communicate the skills that you have and the effects, the results that you've been able to achieve. To Vanessa's point, you also need to be conversant in the vocabulary and the language, and you need to make sure that you are up to date on what's going on. And so that requires, again, your research about the firm, about what's going on in the environment in general. And then to Jackie's point, you've got to be able to bring it together and make sense of it, not being just assuming that, oh, okay, I can make this statement, even though I haven't done that sanity check to say, well, wait a second, is this for real? I was speaking to an individual recently, and they claimed that they had had a certain impact in the work that they were doing. That impact just didn't make sense. And so when you question it, when you dig into it, it becomes clear that they either didn't quite understand the question or that they were not necessarily thinking through and really being able to communicate the true results and impact. So you've got to be credible, you've got to be conversant, you've got to be very comfortable interacting with individuals from a variety of backgrounds. And so all those factors come into play. Some of these are basic blocking and tackling that have existed, for years in the job search. Others more up to date, knowing the vocabulary, making sure you're doing the sanity checks, et cetera. So hopefully that gives some additional perspective for you to consider.
Okay, so we're going to jump to a couple more questions here. So one, someone asked, right, because there's many different programs and many different formats, and there's always questions around like, well, what resource do I have in some of these other programs? Because as we all know, right, like when you look at schools, most people feel like a full-time MBA usually has the full set of resources, and they always wonder what kind of resources they have for others. And someone specifically asked about our online hybrid MBA program. And I'll jump in here for a quick second, and then Jackie, I know you work with them directly, so you can add in any color context you want here. We're very unique in the way that we put our programs out there. Our programs, we do not build for scale and try to like dominate with the number of people that we have in them. We are looking to make sure that whatever program we put out there, we have a high quality of student in those programs. And in particular, because we have chosen that path, we have the same faculty that teaches in all programs. The career coaches that you're seeing on this call work with all of our students within our programs. So, for example, our online hybrid MBA students don't have a whole different set of career coaches that aren't as great as the coaches for our full-time program. And so for us, we have one set of support for all of our students, whether it's career center, faculty, leadership, etc. And there will be people that will be working directly more with your program. Like Vanessa also works with our MSPM students. So you're going to have the best working with you on no matter what format or program that you're going to choose. Jackie, Vanessa, anything to kind of add there?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I'm proud to say that it's it's a pretty consistent um, offering of resources in terms of whether you're a full-time MBA or an online hybrid MBA. And I'm also proud to say, the reason I'm answering this, I don't know if I mentioned this in my introduction, but myself and my colleague in the office, Kate, we are responsible for career programming for our online hybrid MBAs. So we do a lot of work with the online hybrid MBA program at Tepper. It's a lot of responsibility to do that and all these other things, but it really pays off because there are so many synergies that occur as a result of being involved in so many different things that we try to leverage in different ways. And one example I want to give, if you don't mind, this was my alum at Blue Origin who reached out a couple weeks ago to say, hey, Jackie, this is an immediate hire. Probably makes sense for our online hybrid MBAs. This is a full-time MBA alum. And I think it's the benefit of these small programs, JR. I think you're right. It's the benefit of these small programs. It's not hundreds of us. He's a full-time MBA graduating from a small program. And he was well aware of the online hybrid MBA program. We all show up in the same building at the same time at some point during your time in the program. And so he's like, this is an immediate hire. Please share it with all 3 years of the online hybrid MBA program. Get the resumes and send them to me when you can. And I did. And sure enough, within a week or two, they ended up hiring someone from the online hybrid MBA program, a first-year MBA from the online hybrid MBA program. And so the synergies were tremendous. Anyway, I really just wanted to share that because that was a full-time MBA helping our online hybrid MBA population. And that sort of thing happens all the time. So you follow the same path that our full-time MBAs do in terms of if you want to engage with our office, you complete a survey just to say what you're interested in talking about. And then based on those survey results, you're assigned to one of us to get the conversation started. And as I said earlier, it doesn't have to end there. You might start with me and end with Vanessa or Lesley, depending on your evolving interests.
Could I just add the following? I
Mhm.
just want to make sure that people are understanding some of the ins and outs of this, though. The online program's a 3-year program. Most online hybrid students will not seek a summer internship because they're already employed. This is different than our full-time program, where the expectation is that the full-time students will complete a summer internship during their first year to second year. So if you are interested in a summer internship as an online part-time student, that would occur in the summer between your second and third year. It's not going to occur in the first summer as it would for a full-time student, because quite frankly, you won't meet the conditions, the requirements of firms. They require you to have the equivalent of 1 year of full-time classes. So just want everybody to be aware of it. And the situation where, we have first year online students getting a new job through the MCC is kind of unusual. So just want people to be aware of the typical cadence is going to be you're going to start in August of year X. You're going to do, a full year of classes on the part-time program. If you recruit for a summer internship, that's going to be for the summer of year X plus 2. And then you're going to complete your program, and 2.5 years in, 3 years in, and then you take on a full-time role. So just want people to be aware of timing issues with that.
Awesome. So I'm going to try to get through a few questions here. Depending on the question, maybe we'll try to do a little bit quicker answers or maybe one answer. So first, someone quickly asked about entrepreneurship. We have a phenomenal entrepreneurship center, the Schwartz Center. We are also, I think, either number 1 or number 2 in robotics. Someone specifically asked about that in that answer. The actual Schwartz Center is a campus-wide center. However, it is located within Tepper. Right now, Meredith Grelly, the interim executive director, also is the assistant dean for entrepreneurship for the university and also oversees Project Olympus. So there is a wide variety of cross collaboration for entrepreneurial students. So you're going to be able to tap into all of those amazing things at Carnegie Mellon to look for those. Maybe it's like, co-founders, maybe it's adding extra talent into your current startup that you already have established, but you're going to be well supported here. Um, so let me find what I found one that I thought would be a great. Um, Okay. So someone talked about they have an undergrad in physics. They already did an MSBA program, and now they're considering an MBA program. And they're wanted to know maybe if there's any advice on any specializations or is a general MBA a better choice in terms of how to pursue a degree. So I'm gonna kick it off here, and I'd love any extra commentary on this, right? But like this is where there no general advice is going to be great for any individual person, right? This is going to have to understand. I know you gave a little bit there, but it's one sentence to be able to say what is the best thing, right? Because when someone asked that question before, hey, there's new trends going on. What's happening with AI? This is a tight job market. Maybe I want to transition to another industry. It's so hard to give someone advice on something that is general like that because what you really have to do is you have to look at what have I done? What are the things I'm considering I'm doing? And then what are the areas where I have to skill up? What I will say, and this is coming out in a few different ways, right? There's something called the Corporate Recruiter Survey that is through GMAC. Um, don't hate them too much. They do more than the GMAT. But they do wonderful research on that, and they will go out to everybody and say, what do you want out of your workforce for essentially master's graduates over the next 3 to 5 years? And they give these lists of what are they looking for. Right now, that current list is AI skills at number one, IT skills at number three, and data interpretation skills at number five. Right. So there's going to be some things that you are going to likely need to skill up on. Life is about lifelong learning, right? So like you need to kind of figure out what is the type of work that you need to do. Because just saying, yeah, you already have one specialization in data. If you feel like you want to continue on in data and you already have those skill sets set and you're being held back because they're requiring a different degree than you have, that would be different. Always look at what you need to do and with what you want to achieve, and then work back from those skill sets, right? Vanessa, it looks like you had a comment.
Yeah, what is still at the top? So those are the top skills like in the next 5 years. And what is still at the top is strategy, problem solving, and communication, which are core MBA skills, right?
Mhm.
So those are technical skills on top of core MBA skills. And so JR is like fully correct that you kind of have to do that self inventory of like, what am I interested in? What am I passionate about? And how do I position myself to do that in the future and what do I focus on in my MBA that will position me well for a job to do that in the future, right? What skill gaps do I need to close? And that's what you need to focus on. I think the biggest thing that I end up talking with when students come in and do their resumes for that like first meeting is like not being driven by like what they're good at and what they want to do, but more what they feel like they should be doing, like what the where they'll have the easiest path to getting a job, or what their peers are doing, or what their family feels that they should be doing. And I'm not discounting those pressures because those pressures are very real, but you also have to do that self inventory too, and maybe overweight those things versus those other things in your calculation, right? Because you just may set yourself up for failure if you overweight market, family, peers versus yourself.
I'm gonna try to get at least two or three more questions in here. I think one of the first ones that I would love everyone's viewpoint here, which I think is going to be very similar though. Someone's asking about years of work experience, and I think we get this question a lot because everyone's wondering like when is the right time back? So someone said, is it better to wait until I have 3 full years of work experience? Is two okay? Does it matter? I mean, he specifically asked about IB, but I think it's also like MBA level roles particularly, right? So, any thoughts on work experience and what's that sweet spot to make sure that you have options, especially at the MBA or master's level?
I'll start by saying that the first thing I would think about is your answers in an interview and the stories you're going to tell. I'd rather not give a number. I know everyone like is more comfortable with numbers and time frames and all, but I just, in my opinion, because I've seen students come into our program with different scenarios and stories, like, 3-2 students that did these 3-2 programs and came in and got a level of a banking offer just as a 3-2 student through negotiating with an employer. And so, and we have military vets with no civilian work experience who also pivot into banking. But those vets have stories that they can tell in those interviews, right? So that's what I want to get back to, which is think less about the amount of time before you come back to school that you should spend, and just more about what are the stories you're going to be telling a banker, or someone who works in energy or healthcare when you're in that interview and they ask you, tell me about a time you faced a difficult situation, or tell me what you think your biggest accomplishment is, or tell me about a time you used data to solve a problem, right? Like the list goes on and on. I'm more interested in that. And if you're not sure about that, I mean, Mike has our contact info. We can talk about that, like what might make sense in terms of whether, you stick it out a few more years and build, just kind of build the story, the story list, or get back to school sooner rather than later.
Really good advice, Jackie. I like that.
Yeah, I agree. The background, the stories you can tell. However, for consulting, if you wish to enter at a typical MBA entry point, and the title's going to vary from firm to firm. Some firms are going to call it associate, others are going to call it consultant, whatever. But if you want to go into consulting at the typical MBA entry point, then you're going to be much better off if you come into an MBA program with 3 years of experience. That can be military experience or it can be business experience, but you're going to be much better off with the 3 years versus the 2 years. And again, qualification, that's if you want to enter at a typical MBA entry level point in consulting.
I'd say the same is true for tech internships and full-time MBA level roles. They're looking for at least 3 years work experience. That's the general cutoff. But I agree with Jackie, though. If you're at 3 years and you don't have a good 10 stories you can tell in an interview, you'd be better off staying in the workforce for a couple more years before you do your MBA, because that will only help you.
Okay, so there's a few questions that we're probably not going to get to total, because most of these are actually about here's my specific background. What do you think about my pivot? I do think we've talked around this quite a bit, so hopefully people have gotten a lot of insight into that. I will share my email address at the very end. You can reach out to me. We can, join in like a very specific your conversation type of scenario here. I'm going to take one more question here, and then we'll see if there's one last one that we want to kind of like close out the session with. Someone asked, what is recommended for an accelerated program compared to a full 2-year MBA program? Anytime you're going to do something in an accelerated fashion, there are going to be things that you give up, right? So like you're going to give up some coursework, you're going to give up some career opportunities, because typically like that may or may not mean internship, that may or may not mean, you're going to end at the traditional time when companies are typically hiring. So these are all those very individual specific conversations. So all of our advice holds true before. Know what you have done before, know what you want to do. If you don't know the hiring trends of those companies, those industries, whoever is, on your target list, talk to us, right? We want to share these things. We don't try to hold it close to the vest. We want this to be transparent. But typically the best candidates for an accelerated program are those that are not looking to make a big pivot, right? You have a lot of what you already need. You need to get a little bit more to be competitive in that area, and being able to accelerate to get there is what's helpful for you. So the last question in our last just couple minutes here, I guess I'll try to make it general. We saw some of the questions coming in. If someone is having some difficulty, we say, the name of the session, right? Navigating the current job market, and thinking through, how do I start to have a little bit more traction, any one piece of advice that you think would be helpful?
JR, what's the question? I'm sorry. Can you just
So I said, the current job market, right? Like we hear that it's a tighter job market.
right.
Um, and any piece of advice that you think is helpful, just kind of as like a closing point or any, closing thoughts, just something to
Uh,
kind of leave the group here with some words of wisdom.
I think you need to be reflective, know what you want and why. Don't just go with, oh, I see this particular career is taking off. I'm going to do that. You got to know what you want and why. And you really want to step back to Jackie's point, Vanessa's point. You got to build your stories. You have to be able to be credible in terms of how you can contribute to that type of role that's of interest to you. So take the time to do that now and don't just get swept up, end up in a program and suddenly it's like, well, maybe I'll try this for a little bit because my roommate's doing it or whatever. But self-reflection, know what you want, know your stories and how you can contribute in that role.
Yeah, I just will build on that. I will say, because I'm an old marketing person, don't be a vitamin, be an aspirin. Don't be like no one goes back to their hotel room to take their vitamins, but they will go back to their hotel room if they have a headache to take an aspirin. People will break down barriers and break all the rules to make you an offer if you can kill their pain right now. So do your research, figure out what pain point that hiring manager is trying to solve and be their solution, and they will hire you. That is
And
my advice.
and honestly, Vanessa, I just want to build on that. You know, the answer key lies sometimes, most often, in the job description and what they're looking for in a candidate. And when you read that job description and what they're looking for, to Vanessa's point, you should be asking yourself, how can I help this team how can I make their lives easier? What skills do I have to make their lives easier in these areas that they need help in? That's in a difficult market, that's where you're adding value. It's not showing up and saying, what can you do for me? How much training am I going to get? How much professional development am I going to get? When am I going to go abroad? When am I, right? Now all that is out there, right? It's all out there. But if you want to set the right tone early on, that's the tone you're setting. And one other thing I want to say, there's the FANG stocks, right? I call that universe of big companies that like have this sort of allure in the markets and in the news and in the headlines. We're always reading about them, right? And that's okay. But as I tell my students that are working on stock pitches and they ask me what kind of company should I pick to pitch, I tell them the first thing I tell them is not Facebook, not Apple, not Microsoft, not right. In other words, when you're looking at opportunities, broaden your universe and think about those smaller mid-sized companies. I call them mid-sized companies that don't have sophisticated HR teams that are out there doing massive recruiting to find candidates that, if you took the initiative and reached out to them, what that conversation could look like and what that opportunity could look like. So take a look at that broader, maybe smaller size, broader universe of companies that are perhaps smaller in size that could have amazing opportunities for you.
Thank you all for all of your wisdom, your expertise. What I'll try to, close this out with here is we do know that it is difficult sometimes to navigate your career. It is a long career. There's going to be many ebbs and flows and everything that kind of happens throughout it. One of the themes that we wanted to share with you all today, in particular about Tepper, is that there is going to be a great support team here for you. So if you're thinking about what is going to be your path forward and you would rather do it with experts, with a community, with people that can like help, lift you up on those kind of like down times of that cycle, we'd love to chat with you. So everybody have a wonderful holiday season for wherever you are in the world. We're so excited, and I'll drop my email address in the chat now. But thank you for spending some time with us.
Thanks everyone, and thanks to JR for moderating today. Really awesome insight. And it was asked earlier, but I'll say it out loud for those not paying attention within chat. This was recorded, so we will get this video out to everyone who has registered for this event via email pretty soon. And then JR's email was just entered into the chat. So if you want to continue the discussion, feel free to follow up. But thank you all for attending, and thanks for all the insight. This was awesome.